And that's all I want to say around that on that topic, because we have four other topics to get to tonight. And specifically, um, I want to call this topic tonight, or this discussion tonight, the strong delusions, because we're being hit with not just one delusion, but dozens. And I picked out four delusions to discuss tonight. And I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet and to the point. And I'll speak in general terms, and I will incorporate a lot of documents and video clips into our discussion tonight. First of all, the four topics I want to talk about, according to my notes here, are terrorism, the financial system, mass migration, and yes, Zionism. And hang on to your hats. I'm not saying Israel is illegitimate, far from it. What I'm going to say about Israel is what all the Old Testament prophets said about Israel. So if you don't like what I'm going to say, take a pair of scissors to your Bible and just start cutting whenever the Old Testament prophets said anything negative about Israel, including the words of Jesus Christ himself, which were very pointed towards the Jewish establishment of his time. So first of all, terrorism. Where do I begin? I've seen a lot of psychological videos during my teacher training years of association. And one of the videos that I saw was of a toddler, an infant, couldn't have been more than 1 year old, sitting on the ground. And whenever the toddler's eyes actually saw a rabbit, and you know how infants are, they're busy looking around, they're not concentrating on any one particular thing unless they know who you are and you're right in their face. Okay, so as a toddler is busy looking around, the toddler would see a rabbit, and every time the toddler saw that rabbit right in front of them, they would get pinched. After about 28 times on average, whenever that toddler saw the rabbit, he would start to get uncomfortable because he associated being pinched with seeing the rabbit.
Fear could be conditioned, and so it was with rabbits. This baby, known as Little Albert, initially found delight in touching a rabbit. Yet, as Watson began to clang a steel rod and claw a hammer behind the child's head whenever he touched the creature, the reaction became not one of delight, but terror. Soon, the mere sight of the rabbit would elicit fear, even when no noise was provided, a fear that also extended to objects and textures of a similar type. From his experiments, Watson reached a radical conclusion which would come to define political and social engineering in the 20th century. The driving force in society, he claimed, is not love, but fear.
Now, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because I'm detailing an example of how easy it is to condition society. Even when you're 8 months old, you can be conditioned to associate a particular set of emotions with what you see, even if it's a harmless rabbit. I haven't watched television or haven't had cable television or even analog television for 15 years. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why they call what you see on television television programming. Whenever I go to a friend's house and I watch the latest sitcom, I can't believe the topics that are being brought up on television. Things that you couldn't even discuss 3 years ago, but there it is, okay? One of these topics is transgenderism. Now I watched a television commercial from a soap manufacturer, and Dan, I'm kid you not, I'm going to incorporate this video into this video. You see a transgender mother holding his, or should I say her, newborn infant along with the mother because you can't, Dan, tell me what care is or love is. It's all about care.
We are both his biological parents. You get people that are like, what do you mean you're the mom? We're like, yep, we're both gonna be moms.
And so they're selling soap and a social agenda and trying to get you to tie that in together to increase sales of this soap. It's so ridiculous. And thankfully, the vast majority of comments below the YouTube clip of that commercial are profoundly negative. So at least there's some resistance on the part of these social controllers. Now, I bring this up because what I'm about to say wouldn't have been appreciated unless I brought up those two examples of the rabbit and soap. And what I'm saying is this. Again, conservatively speaking, over 90% of the wars and rumors of wars atmosphere that we are now in, as opposed to before 9/11, is entirely manufactured. It's influenced on the light end to outright stage managed with full-on crisis actors, with network TV cameramen and anchormen who know what they're shooting is entirely fake. Okay? So it's influenced on the thin edge of the wedge down to entirely 100% fake on the thick edge of the wedge. And that is designed to keep you in a constant state of fear. If you are in a constant state of fear, you will at first want to run into the arms of the people that you're perceiving will give you safety. In other words, you're going to be more loyal to the very people who are carrying out this terrorism to begin with. Dan, if you give a known murderer a gun and that murderer commits another murder with that gun, are you not an accomplice? Exactly. Right. So if parts of the military-industrial complex, which General Eisenhower talked about, that was his term, back in 1960, end up in the hands of ISIS, is not the military-industrial complex an accomplice to ISIS? You'd have to say, yeah. Well, this is what happens when you leave billions of dollars of grade A military equipment in Iraq and just pull out.
The extremists posted these images online, indeed, claiming that they seized US-supplied hardware. And that's far from the only case, too, when American weapons appear to have ended up in the hands of Islamic State. We obtained this video showing the Iraqi military entering a warehouse abandoned by the jihadists. It was littered with US-supplied equipment. Over the border, too, last year in Syria, the US mistakenly airdropped weapons right into Islamic State's hands. The aid was meant for Kurdish forces that were bitterly fighting the terrorists for a border town at the time, but it all fell off course.
There's no such thing as a vacuum in nature, and there's no such thing as a vacuum in the world of the military and terrorism. Everybody knows that if you're going to pull out of a theater of operations, and you can't take your weapons with you, in other words, it may be more economical not to take your weapons with you, you destroy them so they don't fall into the hands of the enemy. But lo and behold, ISIS comes up out of nowhere. And look at all this military hardware that they have. I mean, I can't understand why people can't see it. Why ISIS people or ISIS soldiers are driving American Humvees in massive convoys. Really? I mean, don't those $100,000 plus Humvees have GPS? I mean, your $10,000 minivan has GPS. You telling me that the American forces don't know where these vehicles are? Come on. And these hundreds of Stinger missiles, which are totally computer operated, transmitting a satellite signal out into space. I mean, you you can't tell me that the American military doesn't know where this advanced hardware came from and where it is. So I have absolutely no mercy for the people who say that it's a conspiracy theory that American forces armed ISIS. I mean, come on, give me a break. So that pretty well nails that down. But like I said, 90% of what you're seeing on the TV news, which I can't watch for the record, because I know how controlled it is entirely manufactured. So I'm going to read from a set of notes, and I'm going to tie a whole set of dots together. And this is going to blow your mind. So this was the result of about 4 hours of research. So here it is. Just dot after dot after dot connects itself. Here's what I'm really good at. Okay. The Nice truck attack, as in Nice, France, of July 14th, 2016, which occurred on the Promenade des Anglais, was filmed from the Westminster Hotel. Filming of the attack occurred before the attack happened by Richard Gutjahr. And by the way, Gutjahr, it's spelled Gutjahr. Now, if you know anything about German like I do, that means good year. And it turns out Richard Gutjahr is always having a good year. He just happens to be at the right place at the right time, always, for years. Amazing coincidence. So here we go. The Munich shopping mall incident, where 9 were killed, of July 23rd, 2016, was also filmed by Richard Gutjahr. Okay, now you can be struck by lightning twice. I mean, it is possible. It's not probable, but it's possible. That alone is not enough to tip my hand and say this is an inside job. So it gets better, Dan. Oh, it gets always better. So here we go. His video of the incident was the only video that was allowed for days. And German police said, please do not post photos or video of police operations online. Do not help the perpetrator. That's suspicious. And we'll get more into that later on. A key witness to the Munich shooting was a young girl by the name of Tamina Stoll. Richard Gutjahr just happens to be married to Einat Wilf, a former Israeli intelligence officer in Unit 8200 who served as the foreign policy advisor, meaning Knesset, to Shimon Peres, who was a strategic consultant to McKinsey & Company in New York, and is a general partner in Core Venture Capital in Israel. She ran for the presidency of the World Jewish Congress in 2007. In other words, Richard Gutjahr has obvious Mossad connections. Because I'm going to tie Tamina Stoll to Richard Gutjahr and Einat Wolf. And how can I do that? Well, it's simple, Dad. Because Tamina Stoll is the daughter of Richard Gutjahr and Einat Wolf. You can't make this up, okay? So, Tamina Stoll, who lives or lived in North Carolina, who attended Duke University, just happened to tweet pictures of the Munich attack as her father is taking video of the attack. Okay, so do you catch that? She's attending university in North Carolina, but she happens to be in Munich with her father, and she happens to be tweeting pictures of the attack along with her father, who's also taking video of the attack. You can't make this up. Okay. Though Tamina attended Duke University, she managed to get multiple photo ops with Hillary Clinton, including in Reno, Nevada. So she attends Duke University. She's got the money to go to Reno, Munich. Her mom's an Israeli operative. apparently this family is just all over the place, I mean, just manages to be at the right place at the right time. And by the way, Richard Gutjahr was also the very first person to purchase an iPad. Of all the people in the world, millions of iPads, he happens to be the first. And he has his picture plastered everywhere. Now, that's not an accident, because iPads are typically used for web surfing. Google owns YouTube, and Google is the parent company of Alphabet. Alphabet is run by a whole bunch of Israeli operatives, including Eric Schmidt. So it is not beyond coincidence that Israeli operative Eric Schmidt gives an iPad to another Israeli operative. And just to put his picture out there as a kind of in-your-face, subtle signature to those who are in the know. So, again, I ask you, what are the odds of this one family having photo ops with Hillary Clinton, being at the right place at the right time for the Munich attack, being at the right place at the right time for the Paris attacks? And like I said, about 90% of the terrorism that we are now experiencing, not just on a once every couple year basis, not just on a once every couple month basis, not just on a monthly basis, not just on a weekly basis. Now we've got about 1 or 2 incidents somewhere around the world per week. I mean, we're being hit from all sides. So I'd like to quote Robert David Steele, ex-CIA. On Russia Today, he said, "All terrorist attacks on the United States are false flags."
There are several terror events in Europe by Europeans recently. Now, each one of the bad guys was already known to security services. Good example being here in the UK. They had somebody who was on MI5's radar. He went off to join ISIS, and he became the jihadi John. So your thoughts? Is this because we have too much data or too many people on the terror watch list? There's not enough real intelligence? What's going on here?
Well, Max, this may be too much for you guys, but let me give you the bottom line as I see it. Number one, there is no negotiating with banks. The hell with them. Throw them out of the country, go back to public banking. Okay? Period. Number two, most terrorists are false flag terrorists or are created by our own security services. Now, I have no direct access in England, but I will tell you that here in the United States, every single terrorist incident we have had has been a false flag or has been an informant pushed on by the FBI. In fact, we now have citizens taking out restraining orders against FBI informants that are trying to incite terrorism. We've become a lunatic asylum. As far as Jihadi John, the best guess that I can give you is that this is funded by Saudi Arabia, trained by CIA. This destruction of ancient artifacts and so on, that's a covert action influence operation. That's not something they would normally do. This is, in one word, largely theater.
He's saying that. So when I'm saying 90%, and when I'm saying that's a conservative figure, yeah, you can take that to the bank. Robert David Steele, ex-CIA, is saying all of them are false flags. So if you don't believe me, then you can't believe an ex-CIA officer whose estimation, which is much more educated than mine, is even more extreme than mine. So, on to the financial system, because terrorism is related to the financial system. Why? Because there is no business like war business.